I'm starting now. I wanted to welcome everyone to the first meetup of the series about Target, in which we are going to be showing code. As you know, last week we had the pleasure of having Will actually introduce the motivation for why using Target. And today we are going to start actually getting our hands dirty. First, I'd like to confirm that you're seeing my screen here, something that reads, who is the audience? Yes? Okay, cool. So as I'm hoping that we learned from Will last week, it is a tool that is of very general application. So I do see potential use cases in 2 degrees, but I think that the audience of this meetup is kind of much broader. You know, it could be anyone who is running a process that takes a long time to run, basically, and that's where there is a payoff in using targets. The syllabus, I'm trying to kind of follow a little bit the retrospective that we did last time, and learn from that feedback. The syllabus, the first meetup was the motivation that we already did, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of a walkthrough. The work comes from the amazing manual, the Targets manual, that has a chapter called Walkthrough. But what we're going to be doing today is much more minimal. It's much more simple, just the bare bones of what a Targets project is. And we're going to be learning how to set it up using a function from the Targets package itself, and then using some of the most commonly used or most useful functions in the Targets package. We are going to be creating a report actually that uses the targets that are made by this framework, and hopefully by the end we will understand what is the benefit, especially when we make a change in a function of that minimal example that makes that function run very slow, and then we'll see hopefully concretely what the benefit is. And then in the future, the things that I think so far we'll be covering is the idea of functions, how you can move your project from having a sequence of scripts to having a pipeline of functions. We're going to be addressing best practices in the creation of what Will defines as a good target. And we're going to be talking a bit about what to do when things go wrong. There's more topics in the manual, which I recommend you to read if you are interested in the framework. But if you are not, maybe some of the chapters here maybe not relevant. Like, for example, there is stuff about cloud computing and high performance computing. So some things that may come handy at some point. So it's good for you to know where to look for that information. But I don't think we're going to be covering that here. So sorry for not having like specific sub-items in each of these topics, and the reason is that Target is new to me too, so I need to kind of go again and read again those chapters, practice them, and figure out what I really want to show here. Also, I welcome contributions here, so if anyone here in the room wants to deliver a specific meetup in this series, please feel free to do so. So, see, there was requirements. Well, so far, 0 requirements. You don't need to know anything to be here today. And the benefit that I'm hoping you to take away from this particular meetup is that you will know, hopefully, if Target is a tool that you may want to know more about or not, basically. So, okay, let's get started. So I'm going to do it like in a very bare bones way. We start with an empty project. Can you confirm that you're seeing my RStudio here? Yes, cool. So as you can see on the files pane, there is nothing here in this project except for this file that defines the RStudio project. So it's an empty project. And I forgot to say, sorry, let me go back for a second here. There is a repository, right? That is called ds-targets. And there is a file called 01 walkthrough. So that file is kind of the script that I'm following right behind the hoods on another screen. So that's pretty much what you can read again if you want to go back to this material and you don't feel like watching the whole video again. So I'm gonna stick this to my other screen here and use that. So everything starts as with any other package, right? Like using the package means, calling the function library and calling the name of the package. And now we have access to every function in the targets ecosystem. So we are going to use the function script. This function is the one that you need to set up, right? The targets project. So just by doing that, you will see that now my files pane has a new file called targets. I could click here, and that's probably what you will be doing too. But you can also use the function tar edit, which pops up the file automatically for you. The file comes with a toy example, and that's exactly what we're going to be walking through today, and some instructions. So I'm hoping that by following these instructions, we will kind of learn what is the basic structure of a targets project. So the targets project is defined by this file. So if a targets project must have this file, it has to have this specific name, _targets.r. This file has to start with, or has to have a call to library and the name of targets, right? Because the functions that are included in this script use the targets package, right? So for example, this function here, which starts with tar underscore, is kind of very clearly a function that comes from the targets package. So to get that function to work, we do need this line here, right? So I'm going to be kind of removing lines here to kind of clean this up and leave the bare bones structure of the packet of the file kind of exposed to your eyeballs. So this is basically done. So what we did is we called the function tar script, which created this file, and we called the function tar edit, which allowed, it opens the file. Now, next week I'm going to be showing, what the content of this file actually is and how you create it. But we can even just run the project. We can run the targets. The word for this is we can make the targets just by calling the function tar make. So bear with me. For now, I'll just call that function, let the magic happen, and then we kind of see what's going on. So tar make is the function that once you define a pipeline in code, tar make will actually do the work, right? So it will read into this file, it will see what needs to be done, and it will just go ahead and do it. And we already have some information here. So the first thing that this function did was to run a target called data. And the second thing that it did was to run a target called summary. There was nothing else to do, so then the pipeline ended. So where is this data and this summary coming from? Well, it comes from here. So this data is just a name that in this particular case is totally arbitrary. Will, when he built this example, he decided that the name of that target is going to be data, right? So when I say target, you can think an object somewhere that you can use. It would be X. If you assign to X the number 1, well, your target would be X, right? So each target, in this case data, has a name, in this case data, and an expression, right? That is code that will run in R to produce one output. And that output is going to be assigned to that object, right? And it's going to be stored somewhere. So that somewhere is specifically this folder that targets created for me. So if I dig into that folder, I go into the objects subfolder, and I can see already that the two names of the files that I see in there are the names that match what targets was actually doing for me, right? So this is kind of dissecting a little bit the guts of the targets project. So the expression here for that will run when targets does its magic is this one here. So it's creating a data frame with some kind of random numbers in there. And then the second target, this is getting more interesting, is calling a function that is not a function that comes with R, but a function that the user defined in here. And it is applying that function to a predefined target. So it's applying it to the target that was created in the previous step here, right? So this is the first step of the pipeline, creates the target's data, And then we, in the second step, we use the target data and apply a custom-made function. So, do we have any questions so far? Pretty simple. Good. I mean, I have to of course, apologize that this does not relate to your real life experience. Real life experiences are way more complex than this, but let's start simple. So, the next thing you can do after you do run make, after you do this basically, is to start using those targets, right? You can use them directly in the console if you want. Why? Because they are stored somewhere where targets know, here in this folder here, right? So you can call the function tar read, and you can give it the name of any of the targets that you know that you created, right? So we have two, data and summary. Let's call summary, for example. So, and this is the result. This is the object summary. This is the contents of it. I could also do it on data, and it will print a long data set here, right? So I could also do head of that, showing that, you know, once you have a target, you can retrieve it with tar read, right? And then you can do anything that you would do normally in R. So data set, you can give it a different name, and then you can do head of data set, for example. I mean, you can do anything, right? So there you have just the data sets are pre-computed for you. You can use it in any way that you are already familiar with. You could create an Markdown document if you want, for example. But then let's keep moving on this minimal file. One other thing that you can do is to move your functions somewhere else, right? Because in real life we don't have just one function. You have many functions. And the place where we'll recommend to put those functions is in the folder R, right? And if you have just one file, maybe you just call that file functions.r or something, right? So let's do that. Let's create a new folder here called R, and then let's just create a new file called functions, and let's store it here in R. So my file now is here. It's empty so far, but I can move the code from here to here. And now we start slowly building a little bit of infrastructure that will support better a project for just in anticipation for this to scale up. But you can start small, Then, of course, you do need those functions to be available in this script. So the next thing that you will do is to call the function source, right? And the name of the file, in this case, are functions. Oops. Functions.r. There you go. So with that, that's exactly what's saying here. So now the file starts with a call to targets, to library targets, follows with a call to source and any number of functions that you need to source, and then continues with some options that you might want to pass globally to every target. So if you have experience working with R Markdown, you may have noticed that generally R Markdown files start with a setup chunk where you can set up options that will apply to every chunk in the file. And then you have the option to set up some options that are specific to individual chunks. Same thing here. So here at the top, you could define options, like for example, the packages that your targets need. And you can tell targets to apply those options to every target. Or you could use also the argument packages inside each of your targets if you want those packages to be available only in that target. I'm going to make a pause here because I think I saw a question or a comment on the chat. Go ahead. That's a good question. Let's see. My guess could be that the answer is no, that you will know that they are made, but I'm very, very new to Target, so let's try that out. So tar make would be one function to call, but you're already familiar with it. It will try to make the pipeline. So instead, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show a new function. It's called tar outdated. So if it returns 0, it means that all the targets are up to date. And I would like to show off one other function, that allows you to visualize the network of relationships between objects, and that is tar. Well, there is two. You can do tar glimpse to begin with. Generally, tar glimpse is very cheap to run. You can even run it before the pipeline has been made. But it won't give you a lot of information. It's just a very nice, quick way to visualize the relationship between targets. But if you want to get a little bit more data, you can do this network. And there you start seeing relationships. You start seeing that how the different targets relate to each other. So to create a summary, you need the data, and you also need the function sum, and only then you can create a summary, right? So this is all up to date. So what CJ was saying is something I would like to touch. Maybe not just now. Give me just one more second, and then I'm going to actually outdate that function so that we see what that actually means. So we've been talking about this idea of targets being up to date or outdated. What does that mean? Okay, so far what we have is we first load the targets package. We then source the functions that we need. Then we pass any option, including the packages that we need. So if we needed more packages, which is not the case right here, you could say something like, say that we need ggplot2. You would do something like this. So this is kind of the equivalent to doing in your normal script something like dplyr and then ggplot2, ggplot2, and so on and so forth, right? So you do not do this in this case because those packages have to be kind of injected in the targets when they are created, right? So instead you do it this way here. You may have whatever style that you like. Maybe you do like to have one line per package. You could do it this way if you like. And then this file will always end with returning a list where each element of the list is one of those targets that you want to define, right? So here is one target, the one called data. Here is another target, right? The one called summary. And here is a list of targets, right? There is many ways to do this. You could also do something like data, and then you could do summary, and then you could create a list with data and summary. Right, so this should be the same if I understand correctly, except that there is a comma here that shouldn't be here, and let's clean this up as well. I mean, this is absolutely not necessary, but I just want to play with it. So let's see if this works. Let's do tar make once again. There you go, tar make. I'm expecting this. It looks like I broke something here. So escape data, escape summary. Okay, so because I did not change those, escape the pipeline. It looks like I screw up something here. Okay, so I'm gonna be a bit more conservative then and undo what I did here. It looks like I need to learn something more before I get into this this kind of weird way of expressing the pipeline. So let's rerun this. Okay, now that it looks better. All right. Any questions so far? We are now going to the more exciting part to try to demonstrate why you would even want to do all this go through all this trouble. That's a good question. I guess that, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know actually, because you would think that it would be internally doing something like library gpp plus a bad name, right? And this should throw an error. So why that error is not being exposed in the pipeline? That's the question. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's make a note. Why not fail if library? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this. This is right? So I'm still expecting that all the targets will be skipped. Yeah, that's fine. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the function in a way that makes it out of date, and also in a way that hopefully will demonstrate why you would even want to use targets. So there is a function in R base which is called sys_sleep, which you can use to just make a function wait for a little bit, right? So let's make this function wait for, I don't know, if I want to be really awkward, let's make it wait for 10 seconds, but it's a bit too much. Let's do 5 seconds. I think we have a question there, Monica, or was that a comment? Monica, skip the case. Our target skip in the case is not needed to run them. The skipped, exactly, yes. So basically there is a cache. So when the targets run the pipeline the first time, it stored this object file in, remember I showed you this target folder, created an object, in this case data and summary. The second time that I tried to run the pipeline, before it actually recomputes everything, it checks if the code changed in any way that could potentially change the result. If the result is going to be the same, then there is no point in recomputing things, so it just doesn't, right? It just skips it. So absolutely. So that's why you want to use targets, basically. But if you do change the source code, so targets will also analyze the source code of every function that you make part of that pipeline. And if it does change, then it will recompute, right? So the function sum is part of my pipeline. See how it is here, meaning that targets will be watching, right, for the source code of that function. So if I now change the source code here, and if I ask here, okay, let me give me the outdated objects. So now you can read summary. Why? Because the function sum is used by the target summary. Therefore, the target summary is outdated, needs to rerun to basically comply with the new implementation of the function sum. So let's actually run it, right? If I do target make, I recompute, but not every aspect of the pipeline. So targets will skip data, right? Because it does not depend on sum. Notice how the target data here has nothing to do with sum, right? So that means that imagine now that you have a very complex workflow, and only half of your workflow, depends on the change that you have just made. That also means that you can save half of the time that it could have taken otherwise to recompute the whole thing. And that's when the benefit comes. So while I was talking, I kind of distracted you. Sorry for that. But the point was to demonstrate that this function sum was slow, basically. So let's change it for 10 seconds and just wait for 10 seconds and watch it. So if I do tar make, it should take some time here, right? It is because the function sum is waiting. In the real life, you will not write a call to a function for a function to wait. What we will be doing is just calculating a lot of stuff, right? So you will be pulling big data sets, you will be doing very expensive mergers, joins, and stuff like that. Well, that is when your functions are paying to run, and you don't want to recompute things that do not need necessarily to be recomputed. So what would be the benefit? Well, okay, so I had to wait, but I had to wait only once. Now, if I want to change something in my pipeline, say that I change, anything that I touch now will outdate the targets. But if I do target make again, it should go very fast. It should skip everything because nothing has really changed, right? And with this, I'm very close to the end. I would like to highlight that, again, the targets are now available for you to use. You could stick them, for example, in an R Markdown document, if you will. And maybe if there is no many questions, I may show it today. But if we do have questions, I will move that to like a more realistic use case in the next meetup. So we are exactly at the time when I would like to stop. Thank you, CJ, and ask for a round of voices. Maybe just a quick round of voices, like to see if anyone has any comment or want to pass. CJ, you're first. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think we'll learn more as we explore more targets. The place to start probably could be the target_queue function, which explains how you define what actually triggers a target to recompute. And it's pretty clever. You know, there are things you can say, hey, look, watch for this URL, the metadata of this URL, and if this URL changed, for example, data store provides us with data sets through some kind of website interface. Targets, we can tell targets to watch for that file, just watch for the timestamp of that file, and only pull the data if it has changed. And if it hasn't, then just fine. And the other place I would start reading is the tar_target function, where basically there's a ton of information there about all the things that you could do with URLs and files and stuff. But I invite you to explore. I will explore my own, and maybe in a couple of meetups we'll have an answer for that. Constanza, any question or comment or pass? Alex, thanks. Alex? Thank you. I hope to go back to the best practices section, and I know if Alex, you have any time at all, it would be great maybe to engage you in that section. Claire, you're next. Yes, I think I agree in that. My understanding is that you declare in that file everything that needs to run, but my understanding is also that you do not run it manually. It's not that I do source_targets.r. What I do is I just call tar make. So tar make, if I explore the source code, I would expect somewhere that it would be actually sourcing that file. I'm not sure where, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it does. But you wouldn't do it manually. You would just call tar make. Jakob? Awesome. Yeah, I think it's going to become clearer when we actually show how, for example, you can create two different R Markdown documents with the same target pipeline. So you have a comprehensive pipeline that is the superset of all the sub workflows that you can run, and then you combine the targets in whatever way that each report kind of is meaningful to you. So I think it does account for that. But then it's also very free, gives you the freedom for you to define, what is actually a project and what is a sub workflow of that project. Jackson, I need to hurry up a little bit, sorry. Jackson? Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Alex might have explored that question. Unfortunately, we don't have time to answer it now, but I'm very, very keen to hear the answer. Monica? Absolutely, yeah, use cases, definitely. Monica? Yeah, I totally agree. And also, I wanted to say that Will, as you notice, is extremely helpful, and he's also willing to meet us again, maybe later in the process of understanding what we can do. So we accumulate some questions, and then we probably invite him again to try get some answers from him. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. I'm gonna post this video. It's gonna be here for those who couldn't join. Yeah, see you next time.